Here's what's remarkable about Jeanelle Teves. Sure, she's the chief commercial officer of Bugaboo North America, the global multi-million dollar stroller brand. She's an influential content creator. She's a sought after speaker. But to hear Janelle tell it, she wasn't always such a star performer. Growing up in a small suburb of Sacramento, California, she says she was never the smartest. She was never that kid with the highest GPA. She was never the fastest on her swim team. So, what changed to put her on such a high performing path? I sat down with Janelle virtually for a candid chat on her professional and personal journey to find out. So, let's toss that script with Janelle Teves. So, Janelle Teves, I am beyond thrilled that you're here. And I was thinking about this. You run a global multi-million dollar brand. You're the head of North American business for Bugaboo, which is a premier brand. Um, but you're so much more than that. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity just to be able to explore successful executives, but as holistic people. We are the sum of our experiences. We are multidimensional. And so to have you as the first guest in my series talking about the people, the experiences, the moments, the struggles and the joys that really have shaped you professionally and personally, and your professional and personal well-being. So you're the perfect person to start this off with. Co goes Unscripted. That's the name of this series. And so thank you so much. I so appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Barbara. It's an honor to be here with you and to share these insights and my learnings and stories with your audience. So thank you.
I'm so happy. You know why I wanted to talk to you? We met, I think it was 2 years ago, and we had a drink, or maybe two, at a place at Terra Luci and Vino, which is in New York City in the Union Square. And you said something, and it's funny how it hit me later. You said, kind of off the cuff, that your work ethic was really was the product of what you saw as a daughter of immigrants in your home. And I don't know why I related to that personally, and I thought to myself, wow. And then I'm thinking, I would love to start there. Like, if you could take me into that living room in your home, and you grew up in Sacramento, California, right? And how you saw that hustle and what you took from that hustle that still informs you today.
Yes. So that's also a big takeaway from you sharing this memory with me, is that anything that we do, there's no such thing as an offhand comment, and you don't know what will resonate with people. So when I think back to my earliest memory and thinking about my professional career, I was 6 years old. And it was a very vivid image to me that I was boarding an airplane that would take me to Europe. And like you said, I grew up in a small suburb in Sacramento, California. My parents did not vacation in Europe. I hadn't even ever been there. But fast forward later in my life, when I did have that chance and that experience, I remember stepping off the airplane at Heathrow Airport, and the feeling that overcame me was, I have arrived. And that became a feeling that I would later chase throughout my career, and really became the North Star in how I would later make career decisions. And later, that global experience is what distinguished me from a sea of job candidates. So I share that earliest memory because when I remember telling my parents at a very young age that I wanted to live abroad and that I wanted to go to Europe, even though I didn't have an example or we had never experienced that as a family, my parents had always embedded deeply in me this belief and this self-conviction that I could figure it out. And it was really just this feeling at a very young age that they had planted this seed in my young mind. You can figure that out. If that's what you want to do, you can figure that out. I think that also multiplied with what you had mentioned, witnessing them working for something. I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. My mother was an entrepreneur. My father supported her. I watched them build their business from the ground up as a team, and happily, by the way, thriving in business. But then also I can speak for myself and also my brother that we felt very loved. Our home was full of warmth. And so now, fast forward later in my life, I'm a mother to two. I run this incredible brand. Years ago, I had the example for me that I could figure it out and that I could do it because I witnessed my parents. So it's a very powerful example, and it was a gift to grow up in that kind of family. And I've taken all of that into who I am today as a professional, as a spokesperson, as a mother, as a creator, as a speaker, as a podcast guest. A lot of what I share now draws from when I was 6 and that vision that I had when I was 6 years old.
It sparked something in you. And I wanted to say for a second, which with the, you'll figure it out. I remember you saying to me, you weren't necessarily the fastest on the swim team. You weren't necessarily, the smartest, but you're very smart, but how we think of ourselves, right?
Right.
Or whatever. But the idea that they would say, you can figure it out. What a gift to give a child. And and I'm wondering about, you talked about what you picked up from not just your parents and who were your biggest influences, but also the family members, right? So that you would pick up bits and pieces from that you modeled. What's a bit and piece that comes to mind for you that still that enriches you today?
Yeah. I think two things. Number one, what I would recommend anyone listening to this podcast is what has served me from when I was a child all the way through the first day of working at my dream companies, is that I always paid attention. And you will learn a lot by just paying attention to the rooms that you were in. And I think that was something that I just picked up. Okay, I may not be from a societal standpoint getting 4.0 GPAs, or yes, from a pure numbers standpoint, I am definitely not the fastest person in this pool. But if I pay attention to the people around me who are really strong in their craft, then I can get just a little bit better. And so one thing that has stuck with me by going through this habit is I'm a huge believer of the 1% gain. And this idea of small steps translate to sweeping big changes that you don't even realize are taking place until you stop and reflect back and you look back on your year and you're like, oh, every day I was just 1% better. I was 1% better in how I did that presentation, or I was 1% better in how I showed up when I was opening my apartment door and I felt really tired, but I just tried to make the most of that 1 hour that I had with my children, or how I showed up on a phone call with a friend. I just by trying to be 1%, but I think it can be really intimidating. We make New Year's resolutions or we write down big annual goals and they can feel like big, meaty challenges, and they are. But if you work by taking 1% gains, that will add up to sweeping big steps and life changes eventually.
That is so important. And I remember in a different way hearing something similar about the 5 minutes that aggregates and then multiplies in all our lives. Is there somebody in particular in your family that modeled that?
Well, when I think back, I think one of the things that I picked up from watching my mother was that she was really meticulous. And she had a great habit, which I would say is sort of the red thread between all business leaders, is that she obsessed her finances. And every Saturday she would, from 8 to 12, she would be doing her books. And because she never outsourced accounting. And it was such a simple thing, but I knew between 8 to 12, on Saturday mornings, I had to entertain myself, or we weren't going to go on a little family adventure. But I watched my mother be meticulous about her finances. And so now fast forward, I'm the chief commercial officer at Bugaboo North America. That is something that's a habit that I've taken into how I show up at work. Okay, I have all these experts around me. I have an amazingly talented team that are experts in their different fields. And I will have them sit down with me and I will say, explain to me and let's walk through it and every single line by line. And I think that sort of attention to detail, not being afraid to ask stupid questions, getting an understanding of the little things because then the big things will make sense is something that I
Mm.
learned about how meticulous my mother was in running her own business. And then at the end, she sold that business, retired because of that. And I learned that at 9 years old, working in that practice. And so that's one of the things that influenced me as a child that you don't even realize until you sort of pause and reflect on what kind of leader you are today that I took from that time in my
And
life.
and it's the 1% challenge, 1% better. That the seed of
1%
something,
game. Yeah, the
1% game.
1%. Yeah, the 1%
That,
game.
that is a powerful takeaway. I wanted to pivot to a turning point, which is this idea and I didn't realize a little girl when this was it. You had arrived as a 6-year-old when you traveled, and it sparked something in you, and you became a global citizen, right? And I'd love to hear about what that did for you personally, professionally, how difficult it was, and the big
Yeah.
takeaways from that.
Yeah. So I had this vision when I was 6 years old. And then fast forward, I used studies as my entry point into Europe. So at 23, I moved to Barcelona, booked a one-way ticket to go to business school where I studied international business. And again, that same sort of like, wow, I am now living my childhood dream. And at the end of that year in Barcelona, I I ended up moving to Amsterdam, the Netherlands, this time for personal reasons. And an opportunity came when I was in Amsterdam for a temporary contractor position working at Nike European headquarters. Now, remember that I was an athlete. I was a swimmer for all of my adolescence and growing up. So Nike was a dream company, an opportunity to work with world-class athletes and on these amazing sport campaigns. And I knew that if I just got my foot in the door, then I would actualize this this opportunity to work for a dream company. And I obsessed and I polished and I prepared for that interview. Everything from my opening statement to what I wore to the type of questions. I'm telling you, everything. This idea again of all the 1% matter. It's not just about the conversation, the interview,
Yeah.
but it's about how you enter the room. It's about doing the research on your interviewer. It's looking up the restaurant where the interview is taking place. So guess what? Spoiler, I got in. And that started nearly a decade-long career where I was paid to travel around Western Europe and I was working on some of the world's biggest sporting events, the London Olympics,
Wow.
um, Berlin Marathon, Paris Fashion Weeks. And I was quite literally living my dreams. And I paid attention when I was in the company, and I fondly referred to that period of my career as the School of Nike because there were incredible world-class leaders, talent that I was surrounded by. And really one of my beliefs is learning by osmosis. And if you are in an amazing room where you feel like you are not the smartest person in the room, you're absolutely in the right room because you are absorbing all of that energy from the people that you're around. So I studied their behavior. I scaled the proverbial corporate ladder fairly quickly. And by the time I left Nike, I was the senior director, the GM of Nike Women's in New York City. And this coincided with me discovering that I was pregnant with our youngest. And it was also in 2020. So the world was going through everything.
Wow.
And I decided to pivot my career and change industries. And that's where I am today as the Chief Commercial Officer of Bugaboo North America. And I think one of the similarities between Bugaboo and Nike is that they are both innovation leaders in different industries. So Nike from sports, footwear, and amazing apparel, and then Bugaboo with the category creating stroller and being known for their incredible innovation and design. So those were really, that's sort of the whistle stop tour of what brings me to my career today. And and maybe just to summarize, it was, I think, one of the big things that I still tell women that I mentor today, younger, more junior professionals that I work with, is to pay attention. Pay attention to what are the highest priority areas of the company and seek projects and experiences in those areas. And then pay attention. Pay attention when you have the gift to work with a really talented leader, meaning you like how they behave, you see them solving problems, you see the team rallying and uniting around a big challenge. That is an incredible leader. Focus and pay attention to how they move, how they process information, how they deliver difficult news, how they motivate people, and borrow their language, borrow their approaches. And that has served me really well.
And I think that what you said in terms of the power of listening, right? I mean, I can't say it enough. The power of listening and to use your word absorbing is and also and to have that international space, global space to draw from is very powerful. I wanted to shift a little gears and talk about mindset and well-being. And what's so interesting to me is that you are a student of happiness, right? And we talked about you studying happiness. And I wanted to get a feel for, before we even go to that, what's been hard for you and how do you cope?
I think there is this well-studied and well-discussed idea of doing it all. And especially at a certain life stage, so I'll speak personally, as my career has built and grown, my responsibilities have grown, this has also coincided with me growing my family. And as those responsibilities grow, there's naturally going to be conflicting priorities. And so a challenge for me, especially as I was in the earliest months and couple first years of motherhood, was figuring out how to manage these multiple priorities. And so I came up with a couple tools which have served me. I started talking about them. I started sharing about them. And it turns out that every woman is also going through this sort of challenge. And I've come up with a few tools that have helped me overcome these challenges, because they were big ones for me. Starting in this job, that coincided with returning from maternity leave. So I had a 6-month-old and I was moving into this big job. And so I very quickly realized that I had to have certain systems in place, for example. So systems meaning understanding my team at work professionally. What was my system? How were we meeting? Who was good at what? How are these individuals motivated? What is also going on with their personal lives, because we are our full selves. And okay, how can we run processes that keep us accountable and also connected and executing on the plan? So what was my professional team system? And then personally at home, how is my family set up and how can I protect the times that are really important for me? So for me, that's before 8 a.m. I'm completely 100% on my family. And then when I get home, usually around 5:30, between 5:30 and 8, my phone is down and I'm fully with my children and making sure that we have the right support system. So that looks like my partner, who is an incredible co-parent and teammate, and the help that we can outsource in the form of cleaning and sitters. So you also need that as you get to a certain stage in your career. That's a reality, having the right systems around you. And I think also just accepting that what you're doing is really good enough, and sort of quelling this notion of doing it all. I think once I tried to do it all, that's a setup for failure. So I do what I can fully and to the best of my ability. When I am at work, I'm fully here at work, locked in. And when I am with my kids, I'm fully present. And I'm really proud of really the way that I feel like I am truly fulfilled in these different categories of my life, because I've set up these systems, and then I've also just tried to be where my feet are when I'm there. That's what's the most important thing to me in that moment.
And I think that, there's been so much talk lately, and it's so true, about the that multitasking doesn't work, right? And that what I'm hearing from you is the focus and the
Mm-hmm.
intention of whatever you're doing in the moment, right? And that's enough. And it
Yeah.
is enough. It's enough. I'm
Yeah.
curious. Yeah, I'm curious about just getting back to the happiness study. Why did you want to study happiness? What did you find that was meaningful about what creates unhappiness, and how that if there's common themes, and how that's been helpful to you about that exploration of happiness.
So I would almost take it a step back and further. I'm really interested and I've really liked to study people who seem to me to be really fulfilled and what I'll even label as high performance in their career and in their craft and in their skill. And what are they doing? What are their habits? How are they approaching their lives and their work? So this could be an athlete, this could be a business leader, um, could be a corporate executive. So I'm really interested in studying people who are at the top of their game because you'll see the same habits between all of them, even though they may do different things. And so my takeaway is that happiness is certainly a component of it. And I feel like I could almost boil that down to connection. So I feel like people who, I'll speak for myself, when I am my best, I feel really connected into the people who matter deeply to me. I feel like I'm doing purposeful, high impact work that I really believe in. And as long as I'm doing those two things, then I am a great manager, I'm a great mother, I'm a great friend. Um,
Mhm.
and so I really like to study people who are at the top of their game, not only from a performance standpoint, but just who seem to me to be really fulfilled and happy.
And what's the connection, if there's a unifying theme in what you found, that's like, oh, that the thread, what would that be? It's connection, and anything else come to mind?
I think connection, I think purpose, having a big picture idea, feeling like you're doing purposeful work and that all these daily to-dos are adding up to a greater vision of your life, what you want it to be, or the legacy that you want to leave.
Yeah.
So I think purpose, connection, we are by nature social creatures. So wanting to um, still be plugged in. Um, I also think that health is a big component of it. And that's one
Yeah.
that I talk about a lot. I think that that's another way of looking at success in life. But if I am healthy, if I'm sleeping, if I'm prioritizing eating healthy foods, then that all has a direct correlation into my business performance or how I am as a leader and as a manager. So I always try and also prioritize my health. It is very tricky though. It's hard to do all the things, especially we all have, when we categorize family. For me, that's my children and my parents who are getting older,
Yeah.
and my sibling and my marriage, my partner. So
Hmm.
it's always it's managing those different things through systems, through routines, through habits, through reflection.
Yeah. Habits are so important. It's funny. It's almost like I was just reading something about the creativity in habit, that habit can open the space for creativity, which was, I was reading something on that. I was like, oh, that makes sense. And for fun, for joy, what are you passionate about? And once again, it doesn't have to be some big thing. I mean, what is it?
Yeah.
What brings you joy? What's a muse? What's a inspiration? And what does it do for
Yeah.
you? It could, for me, it's reading, it's taking walks. What is that for you? What does it give you?
I am hyper aware of the type of content that I'm putting in my brain, because one thing
Oh,
that is really, for me, a driver and that I make space for is learning. And that has been a constant throughout my life. I also think that that's a constant common denominator between amazing, successful people, amazing leaders. You'll see it if you study their morning routines or their morning habits. They're ferocious readers and they're always learning. And so I love to read 10 minutes of a nonfiction book first thing in the morning, I feel like I'm feeding my brain in the earliest waking moments of the day. So I read a lot of nonfiction. I also read a lot of fiction just for fun and for a little bit of escapism at night. So I read nonfiction books. I'm always listening to podcasts. I think that podcasts are a great way to tap into the thinking of experts because I don't have a lot of time. I'll listen to them on 1.5 times speed. So I'm
Right.
always listening to podcasts. Um, the content that we consume, who are you following? Are they inspiring people who are making you feel, wow, that's amazing? Or are they triggering you? If they're triggering you, you should immediately unfollow or block them. So
Amen.
who I follow, so it's not only the articles that you read and what you see, it's who's in your ears, who are you
Yeah.
scrolling. And so I love to keep this curious mindset, learning mindset, and I do that obsessively between anything that I'm sort of bringing into my brainwave.
I think that idea of we are what we take in
Yeah.
it's never more true today when the digital deluge is at your fingertips. So it's really a radical move to I'm going to edit. You got to be,
Yep.
it's a radical move to edit and protect and to enhance what we're taking in. I'm curious about what um some a success that you had that you never could have imagined and in your professional life, and how did you manifest that, and why did you think you could not have done this thing?
Yeah. So I, th- as I even play back and I share my career journey and the ability to have worked with some of these incredible global brands, and now even Bugaboo as the leading, one of the most iconic stroller brands in the entire world. I, and that coinciding perfectly with me having stroller aged children is for me just not a coincidence. I mean, timing was a little on my favor. I was fortunate, but I always say I did not get lucky. I worked really hard to get to where I am at today. But I think that the career that I've had, every step along the way, this ability to have collecting all those European travels and experiences for that nearly decade that I was in Europe, now living in New York City and having the privilege of working on this incredibly iconic, just having celebrated our 25th anniversary brand. That is, for me, sometimes I have to take a step back and I have to think, oh my gosh, this is amazing. My children, both of my children, have been behind the scenes trying all these new strollers before they even release into the market. And I think, wow, this is so amazing that I can celebrate where I'm at in my career and then also have my children be a part of that. As a mother, that was really sort of eye-opening for me. How did this happen? I think by a lot of the things that we talked about, I think it's a combination of a few things. One, by that relentless work ethic that I picked up at a really young age, obsessing the small things because they eventually become the big things. And then I think luck and timing have a little bit to do with it. This opportunity opened up at the right time for me in my professional journey. But I think it's being ready and staying ready by doing all the other little habits, and more importantly, doing a really good job once you've been given an opportunity to enter in your dream company or to up level into that next step in your career. Doing a very good job. And how do you do that? You very quickly realize what are the biggest priorities for the company, and how can I very quickly get some early wins within the first 30, 60, 90 days and start to gain momentum, because then your confidence grows and then you move into the next bigger project. But it's a formula. There's always a formula for being successful in any job. And it's just by paying attention, small things become the big things, and getting the answers to the test, figuring out what matters most, what does success look like in this position? And I try to always do a combination of those three things.
Is there a piece of a just wanted to end on this. Is there a way that you achieve peace of mind that professionally and personally, just a little, I don't know what it would be, a routine, whatever, that kind of grounds you and
Yeah.
gives you the energy to do all this and to...
Yeah. I talk a lot about the importance of a morning routine. And I
Mm,
think that you also, in all of your conversations with business leaders and entrepreneurs and founders, I can bet that a lot of them have a morning routine. And I think a morning routine is so important because it sets up how you move into the rest of your day. And so this is what my morning routine looks like. I am part of a very early club. I wake up at 5 a.m. I
oh
always
my
get the
Lord.
question, what time do I go to sleep? I am in bed. I try my best to be in bed by 9:30 because then that means I am asleep by 10. So then that's more or less 7 hours of sleep, which is enough for me. And it's, I think, high quality sleep for an American. But I wake up at 5. I do gratitude journaling, and that can look like being really thankful for the big things in life, like the health of my parents, the health of my children, my family. But it can also be small things like a small comment that someone made to me that really just made me feel good, and I want to remember it. So I do gratitude journaling. Doesn't take a lot of time, but it immediately focuses my brain on what I call the green shoots in my life. What is going well in my life, even when maybe it feels like the walls could be closing in a little bit. So I do gratitude journaling. And then I pick up that nonfiction book that's right there by my nightstand, and I read a few pages for feeding my brain. And then I move into movement. So I talk about it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be done. So I do a 25 to 30-minute workout. I live in New York City, so this is in my living room. I love a workout class, but I'm at this stage in my life right now where my children, I want to be there when they wake up.
Yeah.
So that's a decision that I've made. So I do a 30-minute workout in my living room. And then at that point, I do my little indulgent treat, which is making a French press coffee. And then I start going into my emails and responding to people. And by this time, it's a few minutes until my children are about to wake up. And then I have breakfast with them. So I try and have that hour with my children before they go to school
Yeah.
be filled with nutritious food and a little bit of joy. Maybe I put some music on. And of course, it's still chaotic. This is not like out of a movie or anything. Of course, it's still chaotic. And sometimes it doesn't go according to plan. But I feel like if my 2 hours of my day start like that, then anything that I do after that is just building on a solid foundation. And so that helps me be all the things. If I fill my cup those 2 hours of the day, then I can pour out to everybody else, and I'm good.
I love that. And that's a perfect note to leave on, even though I can talk to you for 2 more hours.
Mhm.
This idea of the gratitude journal, I'm going to start. The gratitude is so underestimated. I have the French press, but I'm going to start
Yeah.
doing the gratitude. I love
Yeah.
it. This was such a
Yeah.
wonderful, enjoyable, rich conversation. I'm so grateful. Thank you for being my first guest. You were a gem.
It's such an honor. Thank you. Thank you so much, Barbara. And I love this conversation of unpacking professional and personal tools and well-being. So it's an honor to be here and to share these stories with you. Thank you.
Thank you. An honor to have you.